Alright guys, welcome back. Today we're gonna have a look at a new game called Legend of Keepers. Legend of Keepers? Keeper of Legends? Legend! It's called Legend of Keepers. It's got a very dungeon keeper vibe, and you know, you're the big bad boss at the end of the dungeon, and it's the typical reverse. Typical? It's not so typical, but it's the reverse of the typical RPG style where instead you are the hero and you attempt to delve into the dungeon with your merry band of adventurers, and this time instead you're the big bad boss at the end, and you're trying to prevent the adventurers from killing the big bad boss, which is you. So in this video, we're just gonna have a look at the slaveholder boss here. You do have two other boss types you can play as, but the slaveholder is the first one, and I think maybe also one of the easier ones. And we're just going to use the first mission here. So what we can see here first under this mission tab here is these are the monsters that we will begin with, that will be available to us when we begin. And under that we just have three different traps that will also be available to us. Now, when you mouse over these monsters, it pops up with a bunch of different information, and actually this is kind of important. And you know, you can kind of browse this at your leisure, and it's not super important to understand what these things do right now. It's much more important to understand what they do relative to the specific opponents you will face at specific times. But if we just take this little goblin guy here as an example, we can see on the left here he has 50 HP. He has 5 morale, as it's called, and monsters will lose morale as they die or are used in dungeons. Under that is power, represented by the fist, which is 35, and under that is speed, which is 120. Speed really just determines which units get to take their actions first. So higher speed, if I'm against opponents that have less than 120 speed, my goblin will get its action before those opponents. And this goblin has two actions available. It has a physical attack, which does 35 physical damage to the back. You can see three little, let's say, dots, and they are either gray or red, depending on whether they hit or do not hit the three enemies you will be facing in your dungeons. So we see the physical one, which does 35 physical damage, only hits an opponent which is at the back, whereas the poison damage attack below it actually hits only the target which is at the front. And it also applies poison 3, that means 3 stacks of poison. So whenever you use this attack on an enemy, if they can be poisoned, they will take poison damage over 3 turns. So every time they get their turn, they'll take another bunch of poison damage. And each monster, you know, has their own special abilities, sometimes hitting only one opponent, sometimes hitting multiple opponents, sometimes doing morale damage rather than, you know, actual damage. I'm going to have a look at what morale does a little bit later, not right now. And in between the stats of HP and morale and the abilities, we also have their resistances. So we see fire, ice, armor, nature, and air. And that's basically telling you how much damage this monster will take from attacks that, you know, use that kind of attribute. So we see this orc's attack will do 35 physical damage and apply bleeding. And he has 35% armor, so if he attacks another opponent that has 35% armor, he won't do 35 physical damage. He'll do 35 physical damage minus 35%, which is absorbed by the armor. So this is also the other kind of like puzzle, let's say, that you have to solve. Is you're looking at your monsters, you're looking at what kind of damage they can do, but also what kind of damage they can take best, and you're trying to think about how you can place your monsters such that you do more damage to your enemies really than they will do to you, ideally, because you want your enemies to die, and you don't want your big bad boss guy to die. And then finally, on the right side here, we have the reward for completing this mission, which will be a new monster. Now, I've already completed all the slaveholder missions, so I've already unlocked this one. But let's just go to start here. So week 1, actually we immediately go into a fight, which is actually pretty perfect, a good way to showcase. But let's have a quick look at what we have here. This is also a unique kind of way of playing. So you're not always fighting, you kind of doing a dungeon management mini game here, and so each week you will have a choice, or as you see here in week 1 we only have one choice, but week 2 we'll have 3 choices. We can only choose one of these things. We can choose to go to the merchant, go to the engineer, or have a random event, and each week you will get a choice of actions to do. And each one, comes with different things. Merchants allow you to buy new monsters, engineers allow you to upgrade traps, and events will give you a random event where you have some choice or something happen, maybe good, maybe bad. And these are kind of randomized, so it's up to you what you choose, and when you play again you can make different choices and see what happens. So there's a lot of replayability in this. In the bottom right here we have our gold, and that's what we would use to buy new monsters or upgrade our traps. And we have 2 special resources, tears and blood. When you kill enemy heroes you get the blood resource, and when you make enemy heroes run away from being too scared you collect the tears resource. And you make them run away by, instead of reducing their HP to 0, you reduce their morale bar to 0 instead. So let's just jump into this adventure thing here. We can see the difficulty is 1 sword out of 5. There's no disaster, there's no resting room. The reward will be a new monster and between 50 and 85 gold. So let's just click on that. Alright, and so now we're taken to the screen, and this is essentially the kind of the battle mini game of the game. And these are the 3 heroes that will be attempting to kill me today. So we have Thokol the Barbarian, Karen the Scout, and Vaura the Elf. When we mouse over them we can see their abilities, we can see their statistics, what are they resistant against, and what can they do. So this Barbarian at the front, he has good armor. He has pretty high health, 220, so he's kind of tanky. And he can only do physical damage to the front target. So that would be the monster I place here would be the recipient of his attacks, but not this one and not this one, at least not until he's dead. The Scout here shoots physical damage but to the back monster here, and the Elf here, she does ice damage to all 3 targets, but it's not too high ice damage, it's kind of low. But she has this special ability we can see here where she will heal 25% of one hero's maximum life after a fight once. So that would be this first fight. After this first fight she will heal one of these heroes' life by 25%. So we can see they have however much health next to the heart, and we can see how much morale they have next to the smiley face here. And one thing that the game doesn't really tell you super well is that as you reduce your opponent's morale, they will actually take more damage incrementally. So if you can reduce it by 25%, they'll take something like 15% more damage. So it's not only about reducing morale to make opponents run away. Reducing morale also allows you to kill them more easily by making them take more damage. So it's definitely something that you need to think about and try to apply into your strategy here. So looking at this, I see there's physical damage coming at the front and there's physical damage coming at the back. Now if I look at my Orc here, he's got pretty good armor. He can take physical damage quite well. The Goblin here has 25% armor, that's pretty good as well. And the Skeleton Archer here has a minus 50% archer, so I really don't want him actually to be taking any physical damage hits, because he'll take 50% more damage. So this Barbarian here, instead of doing 30 damage, he would do 45, and that's quite a significant increase. So what I would do here is I would place this Archer in the middle, and so he's not going to take any of these hits that come at the front, and he's not going to take any of these hits that come at the back. He will still get this full area ice damage, but it's not too high. And he only has minus 20% ice damage. He has 55 health. He can take that hit a couple of times at least. I'll put the Orc at the front, and I'll put the Goblin at the back. And then at the top here we have, it's not just this one room, this one battle that's going to happen. This order is actually randomized. So for this mission, I have monsters first. After that, I will be able to place a trap of my choice. Then it will be a spell, another trap of my choice, and then a second group of monsters before finally coming to me, Maug, the big bad slaveholder boss guy. So we just press confirm here, we go to the next one, and now I can choose a trap. So what trap you choose in what order, according to what order events are going to happen here, is also worth thinking about. If I apply this one, it will do morale damage, and it will make the next group of monsters also enraged, which means it will do more damage. If I use the bone catapult, it will also do morale damage and will apply the demoralized trait, which means just more morale lost for 2 turns. And then the circular saw, which will do physical damage and bleeding. So actually, in this kind of situation, any of these are not really going to be superior to the others. If I really wanted to go for a morale win and to kind of get some of those tears rather than the blood by killing them, then maybe I'd want to use both of my morale traps to try and make that happen. But looking at the monsters I have here, they don't really have super great morale attacks. So I'm not sure how effective that might be. But let's just go, say, with the let's put the rallying horn down. There'll be a spell there that we get to choose, and then let's put the circular saw down and cut them up a bit. And then we get to the second group of monsters. So again, it's going to be the same guys. Maybe some of them will have died by this point, maybe not. But I know at the front it's still going to be physical. At the back it's still likely to be physical, and in the middle just a little bit of ice damage. Now this is obviously this is a Yeti, and Yetis are they're kind of snowy. They're good at taking ice damage. We can see that he has a 40% ice resistance. How about Frickus here? He has very bad ice resistance. He also has very bad armor, so he will definitely be going in the middle, so he doesn't take any of these 2 attacks. And put another orc at the beginning, and the Yeti at the back. Fresh meat. Alright, and here we go. Now we get into the combat thing, and as I said at the start, this goblin has a 120 speed, and none of these heroes have any speed higher than that, so he will go first. And I have a choice. Am I going to use the poison dagger at the front, or am I going to use this goblin trick at the back? So let's have a look. She has, this elf at the back has minus 30% armor. Okay, so a physical attack will be quite effective, and when we mouse over it, we see that her health would go down, quite significantly by about 25%. And when we look at the barbarian, he has minus 15% nature. If we mouse over him, he will also take not as much damage, but still a reasonable amount of damage. And we have to remember that it also applies poison, which would be extra damage, extra nature damage every turn. And so I'm quite inclined towards that one. Yeah, let's go with the nature damage here. And there we go. We see he's now poisoned. The archer shoots the goblin at the back. He takes a real lot of damage from that. And now we're on to the skeleton archer, who has a choice. Shoot at the back, nature damage, does quite a lot of damage against this elf girl. Or toxic volley, which will shoot all of them and apply 1 stack of poison. Now, this is another part that is important to remember, which is that these stacks of poison here, and in fact the stacks of anything, whether it's frost or fire or whatever does damage or morale damage over time, they can keep stacking indefinitely. You can go up to 10, 15, 20 stacks of this, and as you increase the stacks, they actually do more damage. So if I were to use this toxic volley here, which applies poison to all 3 of them, it would also increase the stacks of poison on the barbarian here, and increase the damage, the poison damage that he takes over time. So I'm gonna go with that one. Down goes my goblin, and I can apply either a Scream of Terror and reduce morale of all 3 of them, or I can use the cleaver and do some physical damage on the barbarian, though he does have quite good armor. However, he's already down to less than 25% health, and he has 4 stacks of poison, which have not been started to even be applied yet. So if I also apply 2 stacks of bleeding on top of that 4 stacks of poison, by the end of by the time they are used up, his health is going to be down to maybe half or something like that. And that's before he even reaches the second group of monsters. And to be honest, that sounds fine to me, so I'm going to go with that one. There we go, down to half health. The orc is the last one alive, and I can attack again with Cleaver. Apply another 2 stacks of bleeding, which will stack on the 1 remaining stack. The barbarian is now almost dead. Now these 3 monsters died, that's fine. When your monsters die, they don't actually disappear or anything like that. In fact, you can see under the portrait pictures here that they have some small yellow pips, and the orc has lost 2 pips, the skeleton archer 1, and the goblin 1. And that's just that's their morale stat that we saw at the start. And so, as you place them in your dungeon and they die, they have a chance to lose 1 or 2 points of morale. And when it gets to 0, if you let it get to 0, then they will be out of your team sick for quite a while, and you don't want that. What you do is you have to take them out of your team and let them rest as you use other monsters in a dungeon, and they will regain some of that morale stat. So there's no worries if they die. It's actually kind of a part of the game for them to die. So now we have a spell, and the Slave Master spells are either whip the guy at the front with some fire damage, and he's already quite low health, so that's a tempting choice. I can apply Enraged to the next group of monsters, although they already have Enraged applied from this trap that we used here. Now, it doesn't mean that this spell is now useless. In fact, as Poison and Bleed stack on top of each other, so does Enraged. So if I use this now, that will just mean that my next group of monsters will have Enraged for even more turns. Although most of the time combat doesn't go beyond 3 or 4 turns, so having 6 stacks of Enraged is not actually gonna be super useful, although it might sound kinda cool in principle. And the last one here is Intimidation, and that will reduce their morale by 48, which is really, really big. If we mouse away from this and we look at the orange bars here, although they are a little bit blurred, purple. I don't know why I said orange, but they're purple. If we look at these purple bars as I mouse over this, we see that they really go down significantly. And that's not for nothing. That will increase the damage that they consequently take, not just from this trap, but also from these monsters and from the boss if they make it that far. So although this Burning Whip will do, maybe 15% of this barbarian's health, and also apply a burn debuff, which will do more damage over time, this Intimidation, I think, by reducing morale so much, would actually overall increase the damage that all 3 of the heroes take. And it will increase, any further morale damage they take from any traps or attacks for 4 turns. Now, the next trap doesn't do any morale damage, and I'm not sure. The orc does also have a morale attack. So let's just use this one for now. Let's see how it goes with this Intimidation. Alright, there we go. So we see that our monsters have the Enrage trait from the first trap. And these heroes now, they're not looking in so great shape. The Barbarian is almost dead, has half its morale, so will take extra damage. The Scout also has lost 1 bar of morale, will take extra damage, and the same for the Elf here. And even the Skeleton here has a morale attack. And so if I really wanted to here, I could go for the morale win and try to make them run away and get the Tears resource rather than the Blood resource. Or I could go for a fire attack, which, oh my goodness, this elf has minus 30% fire resistance, and so this fireball, which does 78 damage, is, well, it's going to absolutely annihilate this poor elf girl. So it's kind of a tricky choice here. I can take out, about 75% of one hero's health in one attack, and also reduce morale by 39. Or I can go for the minus 12 morale on all the heroes, with the also demoralized buff, which will be further morale loss. Now most of the time, I try to aim for whatever will be the quickest solution. So I might like a morale victory for some tiers. But at the end of the day, I also like my big bad boss guy not dying and not even losing HP, because if you keep losing HP regularly, then you might end up with a group of adventurers that get to this final room when you are only on half HP and you then lose that fight. So maintaining your boss's HP is also something quite important. So this fireball does look a little bit too juicy to resist, so I'm gonna take it. Oh dear, oh dear. She is looking very bad. So what have we got now? The Yeti. Oh, this poor girl. The Yeti can throw an ice block at her face for 65 ice damage and she will be out of business. Or we can do area damage of cold. And actually, if we look here, we see that this elf girl, she has 13 health. And on next turn, she's going to take -5 from the bleeding. This freezing breath does 20 ice damage, although it won't kill her outright. I suspect that when it gets to her turn, the final remaining tick of bleed would kill her. So I could go for the instant death with the ice block here, or I could try to spread the damage out a bit, reduce the speed of my opponents, and by paying attention to this debuff here, we can predict that she's going to die anyway. So let's try that. Let's go with the freezing breath. And so the order of the monsters changed now because their speed dropped, and so this elf was actually going to go before the orc, but she lost the speed to do so, and so he's going first now. And he could even add in a scream of terror here. It's very close. Finish the girl off with the fireball. I'm gonna go for the area morale here. I'm gonna see if I can get this barbarian to run away home crying. Oof. So if I use the freezing breath now, the elf most certainly will die, as will the barbarian. And I won't be able to get that tier resource. So I might just choose instead to kill the elf with an ice block. And then on my next turn I can use the orc to do one final area morale damage attack and maybe make this barbarian run away home squealing. And there we go. When a hero dies, the remaining heroes also take morale damage. And so the barbarian, being very low on morale, saw his elf friend die and decided that he's out. He's not interested in doing this anymore. One girl left, and so we can choose now. We still have 3 monsters and she's just one little scout. So we could go for the traditional kill and it would be fairly easy, or I could just go for the morale and she would also run away home. We see that. We see a little purple running man over her health bar when we do this. That shows that she will run away after this. Scary. Alright, so here we go. We see heroes killed. I killed 1, so I got 4 blood. And I scared 2, so I got 8 tears. And I got 56 gold as a reward. And I also have a choice of monster to pick out of these 3. So just have a mouse over, have a look at what they can do. Think about what kind of style you want to play maybe, or perhaps you're thinking about, oh, I don't really have so much ice or fire damage in my team, so maybe the skeleton cultist would be good. Or I don't have any air damage, so maybe I want the goblin drummer, and I think, well, that ability to apply enrage to all the monsters in my group is also pretty good. Or you might like the look of this big bad boar man with his very large warhammer. and he does quite a lot of physical damage, and he also has an ability to stun. So they all come with, different stats, different abilities, different kinds of damage, and when you level them up, they will also get a third ability underneath the two they already have here. So looking at these, I kind of like the look of the Boar Man, so I think I'll take him. So here's the motivation. Sorry, I called it morale earlier, I think, but it's actually called motivation. So the Orc lost 2, this Skeleton Archer lost 1, and the Goblin also lost 1. The other 3 monsters didn't lose any because they didn't die, so they only lose motivation when they actually die. And here we go on to week 2, and we get our choice of tasks here. I think maybe, let's have a look at Engineer quickly, if I click this. So I can choose now to upgrade these traps. I really like the circular saw, and it'll cost me 150 gold to upgrade that, so I'll do that. And I could upgrade the other ones, but if I do that, then actually I wouldn't really have any gold left for anything else. So it's worth bearing in mind that although you can spend all your gold at once, and sometimes that is maybe a good thing to do, it's not always a good thing to spend all your money just because you can. So I'm not going to upgrade any other traps actually, I'm going to leave. And then this takes me to the next week. We see on week 5 we will have to fight more adventurers again. So if I have a look at my monsters and traps, which is this little button here, I can actually change, so you get 2 rooms of monsters, and it says here room 1, room 2. So room 1 is first, room 2 is second, and here is my new Boar Man. And I can choose to have him available to put down in room 1, or if I just click and drag, I can have him available in room 2. If I want to take monsters out to have a rest during the next dungeon and regain that motivation, I can just put them in the garrison here. Now they have to stay there, and you will always have 3 monster slots per room, so having just 2 monsters available here and 4 here is maybe not the best choice. So I could just move my Boar Man over here, and then I still have 3, and this Orc can rest during the next fight, regain that motivation, and then I'm not in danger of him getting 0 motivation and then being out of combat, or out of not being able to work for me for maybe 8 or 9 weeks, which is sometimes quite bad. You can also have a look at your traps. You can have 6 traps at a time. Well, 6 traps at a time available for you to use, during your combat game. And so that's pretty much it. You go through the mini games here, having a look at merchants and events, and choosing which kinds of enemies you want to fight. Although here it only gives you one option of single difficulty adventurers, a lot of the time it gives you a selection of perhaps adventurers and veterans and even champions. So you get a choice of kind of difficulty. Do you want to take the easier opponents, or do you want to take the more difficult opponents, which also come with superior rewards? That's up to you. It doesn't matter if you lose, you can always just try it again and do it a different way. And so that's pretty much it for how you play Legends of Keeper. Legends of Keeper or Legend of Keepers? Which one is it? It's Legend of Keepers. That's the one, yeah. So that's it, guys. I hope that helps you for understanding this game. It's a really nice little new indie game, and I've had a lot of fun playing it. So thanks for watching, guys, and come back next time.